Now we already know that when we have certain income today, then we can either choose to consume it or to save it by putting it in the bank. When we put it in the bank, then we are going to gain some interest. Because of that, the $1 we receive today will not mean the same thing as the $1 we receive 1 year after. That is because the $1 we receive today is 1, and then we can put it in the bank, and then by next year it will be 1 plus the R if the interest rate is R. On the other hand, if we receive $1 1 year later, then we are going to only get $1. Therefore, the $1 we receive today will be 1 plus R 1 year after. The $1 we receive 1 year after is 1. Therefore, the $1 today doesn't equal the $1 1 year after. So then when we want to add up the income that occur at different dates, what can we do? We cannot add up the $1 occur today with the $1 occur 1 year after because there are different $1. So in here, we need to introduce the term that called present value to resolve this issue. So what is a present value? A present value is the value in terms of today's dollar or goods for the payments made in the future. This concept is very important when we want to make decisions across time, and we need this concept when we are developing the model of consumption in the future. So to begin with, we want to talk about the concept of present value in finance perspective. That's probably easier to be digested because it's more intuitive. So in finance, we focus on the nominal return, and we can think about that we are in the economy that only with the nominal return, and eventually as long as there is no inflation, then the nominal return will equal to the real return. But let's focus on the nominal return for the time being and don't think about other things. So now you are given a timeline, and there are two dates. One is t and the other is t plus 1. You can think about that you have $1 that is given to you at time t. And then so when you receive that $1, what you are going to do? Well, in finance, you know you can put that $1 in the bank and then receive the nominal return. So then at t plus 1, you are going to get 1 plus I. In other words, if you want to get $1 at t plus 1, then you need to put 1 over 1 plus I in the bank, and then 1 period later, you are going to receive $1. So in here, the 1 over 1 plus I is called the present value of $1 at time t plus 1 back to the date t. In here, I abbreviate the term present value as PV. Now let's look at another scenario in which we want to identify the present value of the nominal amount of X to be received in year N. So let's draw another timeline in here. We have date t, t plus 1, up to t plus n. We want to know if we have an X amount that occur at t plus n, what will that equivalent to the value at day t, which we call the present value of a nominal amount of X to be received in year N. So to begin with, we know that if we have $1 received at day t, we can put it in the bank, and then 1 period later, for example, 1 year, then you are going to get 1 plus I, because in this economy, we are going to receive a nominal return I. So if you have this amount, and then you say, well, I still don't want to spend it, I want to keep it in the bank for another 1 period, then how much are you going to get? You are going to get 1 plus I squared. And then if you keep on thinking that you don't want to spend the money that you put in the bank, that is the $1 you put in the bank at day t, then at the end of the n periods, you are going to get 1 plus I to the power of n. So that will be the $1 at t that becomes at the end of the t plus n, which is 1 plus I to the power of n. Therefore, if you want to have $1 by the time t plus n, how much do you need to put in the bank n periods before? The answer is 1 over 1 plus I to the power of n. So we call this term again the present value of the nominal amount x to be received in year n. And this is the formula that we need to use when we want to compute the present value. Now let's move on to look at another scenario which we want to add up the cash flow I that occur at different dates. So again, we want to have a timeline. Now we want to have it begin from period 0, and then we have the income that comes in, or the cash flow that comes in at each date. At date 1 we receive x1, in date 2 we receive x2, and at date 3 we receive x3, and at date n we are going to receive xn. So then how to come up with the present value for this series of the cash flow? We say that the present value of this entire cash flow stream is that you need to add up the present value of the cash flow that occur at different dates, and then you will be able to get the present value for the entire cash flow stream. So given that you receive x1 at the date 1, so the present value of x1 will become x1 over 1 plus I. Given that you receive x2 at day 2, so the present value of the second cash flow will be x2 divided by 1 plus I squared. Then you receive the x3 amount in day 3, so the present value of this amount will be x3 divided by 1 plus I to the third power. So then you add up all the cash flow that occur at different dates. At the end, you need to add up the last cash flow that occur at date n, which is xn, and then you know the present value of that cash flow is xn divided by 1 plus I into the power of n. So in here, we can add up all the cash flows occur at different dates. Before we introduce the concept of present value, we cannot add up the cash flow occur at different dates because we know that x1 occur at date 1 and x2 occur at date 2 are different things. If you add up the x1 and x2, you are adding up the number of apples with the number of the oranges, and it is not correct. So in here, in order to add up the cash flow stream that occur at different dates, we need to come up with the present value for each cash flow at different dates and then add them up. So then this equation will then becomes the summation of the xt over 1 plus I to the power of t, and we sum up the values from date 1 to date n. So this is the formula for how to come up with the present value for cash flow occur at different dates. Up to this point, I'm hoping that you guys have a clearly idea about what does it mean present value and why we need the concept of present value. So then we want to introduce this concept to the domain of economics. So then in economics, we focus on the real returns. And we also are given the income instead of cash flow at different dates. When we are talking about income instead of cash flows, we are counting the number of the goods instead of the dollar amount you receive. So again, we are given a timeline that is day t and t plus 1. We want to see if we receive 1 unit of good at day t, how much it will become at t plus 1. And given that the real return is r, we are going to receive 1 plus r. You will ask, well, wait a minute. In finance, the concept is quite clear that you can put the $1 in the bank and then 1 period later you are going to receive 1 plus I. But in here, you have received 1 unit of goods. For example, you got an apple. How could you get 1 plus R 1 period later? Well, in here, we are talking about the real return, and you can think about the bank give you the real return instead of the nominal return. So you are put the money in the food bank, and in that food bank, when you give them one apple at the time t, and then 1 period later, that food bank are going to get 1 plus r. For example, if the r is 50%, the bank will give you back 1.5 of apples. So that will be the real return that we are talking about in here. So then in here, we want to ask, if we want to get 1 apple after 1 period, then how much apple or how many apples that we need to put in the bank such that 1 period later, we will be able to get a complete 1 apple. It turned out that we need to put in 1 over 1 plus r in the bank, and then later on, 1 period later, we are going to receive 1 apple. So this 1 over 1 plus r is the present value of 1 unit of good at time t plus 1 back to date t. So similar to the previous discussion, we also want to look at another scenario, which is about the present value of a real amount x to be received in year n. So we draw another timeline again. In here we have day t, t plus 1 up to t plus n. So then we want to ask, if we receive x amount in year t plus 1, then how much will that equivalent to back to the date t? So again, if you have 1 unit of good at day t, if you will be able to find a bank that give you real return, 1 period later, you are going to get 1 plus r. And then 2 periods later, that is after 1 period, you decide not to eat what you get, you can't put everything you got in the same bank, you are going to get 1 plus r multiplied by 1 plus r, and then you are going to get 1 plus r squared. And then you can keep on keeping the investment or the whole amount that you receive from the bank until day t plus n, and then you are going to get 1 plus r to the power of n. Therefore, the $1 at t will becomes 1 plus r to the power of n at t plus n. And then we ask, if we want to get 1 unit of good at t plus n, then how much do we need to put in this particular bank at day t? So then it turned out to be 1 over 1 plus r to the power of n. Therefore, we say that the present value of an amount that you are going to receive x at date n will be x over 1 plus r to the power of n. And that is the formula for how to come up with the present value for a real amount x to be received in year n. So the formula is very similar to the formula we have when we are talking about the present value in finance. The only difference in here is that we look at the real return, but when we are talking about the present value in finance, we are talking about the nominal returns. So similar to our earlier discussion about how to come up with the present value under the field of finance, we want to talk about how to add up the income occur at different dates. And again, we already know the income occur at different dates, in fact, are of different units. 1 unit of good you receive at day t will become 1 plus r units of good at t plus 1. So then if you want to add up the income y that occur at different dates, you cannot simply add up the y1 and y2. So now let's look at the timeline again. We have an income that occur at day 1, 2, and n. At day 1, we have y1 comes in. At day 2, we have y2 comes in. And at date n, we have y in comes in. So then when we want to add up the incomes that occur at different dates, we cannot simply add up y1, y2, and yn. That is because y1, 1 period later, that is at day 2, y1 will becomes 1 plus r multiplied by y1. So then if you add up the y1 and y2 together, you ignore the fact that the y1 comes in 1 period earlier and 1 period later at time t2, that the y1 becomes y1 multiplied by 1 plus r. So then we know that when we want to add up the income occur at different dates, we need to convert all the income that occur at different dates to the same date. So to do that, we need to introduce or adopt the concept of present value. We say that we want to convert the y1 back to date t equals 0, and then we are going to get the present value of y1 equals y1 over 1 plus r. We can do the same thing for the income that occur at time t equal 2, and then we are going to have the present value of the y2 that equals y2 over 1 plus r to the power of 2. So then by doing so, we convert the income occur at different date back to the same date, that is t equals 0. And then finally, we also do the same thing for the income occur at day t. So then now, given that they are converted to the equivalent income at day t equals 0, we can simply add them up, and then we will be able to know what is the total income that we are going to receive for the entire time horizon. That is, the present value at day t equals 0 is the summing up of the y1 over 1 plus r plus the y2 over 1 plus r to the second power plus all the other income occur at the date between the t equal 2 to t equal n, and then we add up the last income, which is the income that we receive at time t equal n, which is yn, divided by 1 plus r to the nth power. So then we can have the formula for how to come up with the present value for income occur at different date, which is the summation of the y, that is the income occur at different date, over the 1 plus r to the power of the t, depending on the date that you receive the income, and then the t is from 1 to n. So this is the formula for how to come up with the present value for the multiple income at different dates.